One is a descent into a forgotten kingdom, a masterclass in quiet melancholy. The other is a frantic ascent, a sequel that refines, accelerates, and punishes. Team Cherry created two masterpieces, but they are not the same experience. So the question isn't which game is good, it's which game is right for you. The fundamental difference between these two titles is best understood through their combat. This isn't just a character swap, it's a complete re-engineering of the game's core feel. The original Hollow Knight is a game of methodical, reactive positioning. As the Silent Knight, combat is a deliberate affair, rewarding patience, the careful study of attack patterns, and the strategic use of a single, precious resource, soul, for both healing and powerful spells. The core loop is about finding small, precise windows of opportunity to strike before retreating to safety. It's a grounded, thoughtful dance where every move must be considered. Silksong throws this philosophy out the window. Hornet is inherently faster, taller, and more acrobatic, and her entire kit is built around aggressive, relentless momentum. Reviews from major outlets like IGN describe the shift as turning the game from a deliberate exploration into a full-on sprint. Hornet's movement and attacks blend into what PC Gamer calls a delicate dance, a flurry of motion that feels less like a duel and more like an aerial ballet. This is echoed throughout community forums, where players who master Hornet's speed and agility claim the experience blows Hollow Knight out of the water in terms of raw mechanical satisfaction. This philosophical shift is perfectly encapsulated by the healing mechanic. In Hollow Knight, the knight must find a safe moment, plant their feet, and focus to restore a single mask of health. It's a moment of vulnerability that forces a defensive mindset. Hornet's bind ability, however, instantly heals 3 masks but requires a full bar of silk, a resource generated exclusively by landing attacks. The mechanical implication is profound. To survive, you must attack. Healing is no longer a defensive retreat but an offensive reward. This single change forces a constant, forward-pressing playstyle that defines the entire experience. This extends to the customization systems. Hollow Knight's charms allow for deep, often passive, build crafting that fundamentally alters the knight's abilities. Silksong's system of crests and tools is more active and situational, encouraging players to swap loadouts to meet specific challenges. In Hollow Knight, equipping the compass or gathering swarm felt like wasting precious notches that could be used for combat. Silksong cleverly places these utility tools in a separate category, freeing players to craft combat-focused builds without sacrificing navigational ease. The result is a system that feels more flexible and less punishing for making practical choices. This complete overhaul of the protagonist's capabilities is the primary driver for nearly every other design decision in Silksong, especially its most controversial element, the difficulty. Team Cherry's developers stated that Hornet being taller changes everything, and that because she is inherently faster and more skillful, even the base-level enemy had to be more complicated, more intelligent. The increased enemy complexity, the frequent use of attacks that deal 2 masks of damage, and the blisteringly fast boss patterns are not arbitrary difficulty spikes. They are a necessary balancing act. The game had to become harder to provide a meaningful challenge to a protagonist who is vastly more capable than her predecessor. This reframes the entire difficulty debate from, is it too hard, to, is this specific type of high-octane, aggression-focused challenge the experience you are looking for? This contrast in design philosophy extends to the very soul of their worlds. Hollow Knight champions the joy of being lost. Its world, Hallownest, is a lonely descent into a beautiful, decaying kingdom. Reviews from IGN and GameSpot celebrate this profound sense of discovery, even framing the initial frustration of its overly brutal map system as a core part of its appeal. The atmosphere is one of quiet melancholy, of exploring the aftermath of a great tragedy. You are an archaeologist in a magnificent tomb. Silksong, in contrast, is a guided ascent. The kingdom of Pharloom is a vertical climb to a shimmering peak, and the journey is structured with more modern conveniences. The game introduces quest boards in hub areas, waypoints for major objectives, and a clear in-game menu to track your wishes or quests. This makes navigation, as GameSpot notes, far easier and provides a consistent flow of progression from start to finish. Community analysis of the maps reveals that while Hallownest's individual biomes felt larger and more sprawling, Pharloom is composed of more numerous, smaller, and more distinct zones. This creates the feeling of a vast, populated kingdom rather than a single ruined city. However, this comes at a cost. Many players on Reddit lamented the loss of the peaceful stretches and serene moments of isolation that defined the original. The world of Silksong is more alive, but also more relentlessly hostile. This shift was a direct response to a key friction point in the original. For many newcomers, Hollow Knight's lack of direction was not an atmospheric feature, but a frustrating barrier. Silksong's more guided approach aligns with Team Cherry's stated goal for it to be a potential first Hollow Knight game for new players. Yet, in solving this problem, they fundamentally altered the emotional core of the experience. For a huge portion of the original's fanbase, the feeling of being lost was not a bug, it was the central feature. The magic was in the solitude, and the subsequent eureka moment of finding your own way. The narrative delivery is just as distinct. The knight is an enigma, a silent vessel into which the player pours their own interpretations. The story of Hallownest is something you unearth, piecing together a grand, sorrowful history from environmental clues, item descriptions, and the cryptic whispers of the few remaining inhabitants. It is a world-centric story. Hornet, by contrast, is a defined character. She has a voice, a known history, and a clear motivation. Her journey through Pharloom is a personal one, a quest to reclaim her heritage and uncover secrets tied to her own past. This makes Silksong's narrative more direct and character-driven. The world of Pharloom, while fascinating, serves as the stage for her story. Consequently, the atmosphere shifts. Hollow Knight's world is described as moody, somber, and tragic, with a muted color palette and a haunting score that echoes the sadness of a majestic civilization brought to ruin. Silksong is consistently reviewed as more vibrant and colorful, a world teeming with life, danger, and action. Ultimately, the choice of protagonist dictates the tone. If you want to solve a mystery, you descend into Hallownest. If you want to star in an adventure, you ascend Pharloom. Many feel the game was explicitly designed for the Path of Pain players, and is far less accessible to casual fans than the original was. A particularly sharp point of contention is the run back, the trek from a checkpoint back to a boss after dying. Countless threads and video essays have decried these sequences as tedious, punishing, and disrespectful of the player's time, with some calling it lazy game design. This division reveals a fascinating schism in the player base, one created by the success of Hollow Knight's own endgame content. The free DLCs, particularly the Godmaster expansion, introduced incredibly difficult boss rushes that catered to the most hardcore fans. It appears Team Cherry, a small team deeply engaged with its community, designed a sequel for the players who conquered Godhome, potentially underestimating how many fans love the world of Hallownest without ever attempting its most brutal challenges. This creates a paradox. Silksong is a phenomenal sequel for the expert player that Hollow Knight created after 60 hours of dedication, but it can be a brutal and alienating experience for the newcomer, or for the fan who was drawn in by the first game's atmosphere rather than its extreme challenges. So where does that leave us? Neither game makes the other obsolete. They are two sides of the same beautiful hand-drawn coin, offering distinct experiences for different types of players. The choice depends entirely on what you value most. With this data, we can make clear problem-solving recommendations. For new players to the franchise, start with Hollow Knight. Its more gradual difficulty curve and focus on fundamental mechanics make it a far better introduction to the series. It teaches you the language of this world. The community consensus is that while starting with Silksong is possible, its steep learning curve makes it a punishing first impression. For hardcore Metroidvania fans and challenge hunters, your destination is Silksong. Its higher skill floor, vastly higher skill ceiling, complex enemy design, and demand for absolute mechanical mastery will be a deeply rewarding experience. It is the ultimate test of skills honed in the genre. For casual players with limited time, this is a difficult call, but the recommendation leans toward Hollow Knight. While their main story completion times are similar, Silksong's front-loaded difficulty and frustrating runbacks can create significant roadblocks that feel disrespectful of a player's limited time. For story-driven players and lore seekers, this depends entirely on your narrative preference. For a mysterious, archaeological experience where you piece together a dead world's history, the answer is Hollow Knight. For a more direct, character-driven adventure with a clear, voiced protagonist on a personal quest, the answer is Silksong. For speedrunners and high-skill players, Silksong is the future. Hornet's incredibly deep and versatile moveset offers a much higher potential for sequence breaks, skips, and high-level optimization. The speedrunning community has already demonstrated that its mechanical depth is a vast and fertile ground for pushing the limits of the engine. To choose Hollow Knight is to choose a pilgrimage. To choose Silksong is to choose a hunt. The question is not which is better, but which call you are prepared to answer.